Are you seeing all these amazing runners pushing themselves so hard and just racing incredible times, and you're wondering, how can I do the same? Then this video is for you. So I'm a 2:46 marathon runner from Norway, aiming for the Olympics. And in this video, we're gonna talk about who needs to push harder, why you aren't pushing yourself harder, and thirdly, I'm gonna give you my best tips to push yourself. Who needs to push themselves harder? The first question I'm gonna ask you is, have you gotten a VO2 max test or a lactate test and figured out what your specific heart rate zones are? Because there's so many differences between all of us. So figuring out where your heart rate is at and what paces are gonna be right for you based on your heart rate is gonna be the most important thing to do to figure out if you even should be pushing more or if you actually should be pushing less. And given that you clicked on this video, I also want you to reflect upon what personality you have and be really honest with yourself if you are the type who actually already is really good at pushing yourself, or if you're the type who should practice giving it more effort during your workout. Because understanding your personality is going to be really important to actually execute the workouts in that strategic way and not just based on what you think. To give you an example, my personality is definitely to push harder and more, and I definitely would have clicked on this video being like, okay, how can I do even more? But I know that my personality now has already gotten me to do too much, and through getting that lactate test and knowing exactly what my threshold heart rate is at, and then having a max heart rate, that actually meant that I was needing to push less than before. So the reason I say this is because I really want to make sure that you're not like me, thinking that you should do more and then actually you should do less. I do want to mention though that pushing more is definitely going to be a good thing at a race. So at a race, that's when we're going to give it our all, especially at the end. So there is a very big difference between your training and your race. And the sooner you realize that, and the sooner you can work with your body in training, and then make sure you have those components like tapering before the race, the better you are going to be able to really get out your potential on race day. So why aren't you pushing harder? So after we get your heart rate zones tested and we see that, okay, you're actually in the correct zones, then we can start to think about, okay, well, you're not able to hit that higher heart rate than we would want. What's going on here? This happens when my athletes are doing too many of the similar workouts, meaning that they don't have enough variety in their training. So they're doing all of their workouts maybe at threshold. And in reality, we want more of 20% of your workouts to be at threshold. So what happens when you're doing too much at that higher intensity is that your body is not recovering from the workouts. So you're going into your workout with fatigue. And that fatigue is going to make that heart rate feel harder. I don't know if you've experienced this, but you can have a run where you're running with like 160 heart rate, and that can feel like so easy. Like I could easily go up to like 180, but you could also have that same run with 160 heart rate feel so tiresome, or even maybe 150 can feel really tiresome. And the reason why this is because of how recovered you are going into that session. So very often I see that people are struggling to push themselves harder when they are not fully recovered. So I really urge you to periodize your training. So having more low intensity training, what people often refer to as zone 2 training, and then having some days that are threshold work or some like higher intensity training. But again, we don't want that to be too high, because if it's too high, again, you'll struggle to recover from it, and then you'll carry that fatigue into your next run, and you'll have this like vicious cycle of always being tired. So that leads me to point 3, which is my tips for pushing yourself harder. My number one tip is going to be to periodize your trainings. Basically what I just talked about. It's going to be having some easy days, some harder days. It's even going to be having some harder weeks and then some easier weeks. So the more we can periodize your training, the more your body is going to adapt to that higher stress through having that easier period. And that's just like a great way to absorb your workouts and how we absorb the workouts is how you're gonna get fitter come race day. And I want to mention that as far as pushing yourself harder and recovery, it's not just about the running. It's also about other things that you're doing in your life. So us runners, especially us marathon runners, we have a tendency to take on a lot of responsibility and have a lot on our to-do list in general. I want you to remember that even though it's not running, say it's strength training, say it's walking, say it's golf, say it's just playing with the kids, whatever it is, that is going to be stress on your body. And that is going to impact your ability to recover and absorb your running. Therefore, I just really urge you to think about how much you are truly resting and seeing that as a good thing, because then you are really allowing those adaptations to come from your runs. So my last tip on pushing really hard on race day, because we definitely want to push hard on race day, is going to be to taper before the race. Tapering before the race is just essential, and it's just exactly the logic that we talked about now for the last minutes. It's all about recovering your body so that come race day, that effort just feels easier. That's going to allow you to just take out everything that you have on race day. On that note, I do want you to think about racing progressively, because you can't start off the race pushing to exhaustion. Most races that are long distance, you're going to be working right at your lactate threshold. So it's really feeling what that feels like and knowing how long you can stay at that heart rate, that effort. Because yeah, if you start off above threshold, then you can't go for that long. And we know that all of the running records are actually taken with negative splits. So meaning that you're starting off slower and then increasing the pace. So to conclude, yes, you need to stress your body to build back stronger and recover, but I urge you to do so in a smarter way. So if you're curious about how to manage intensity, then check out this video where I talk about that. Thank you so much for watching. And if you're interested in working one-on-one with me as a coach, check out my form below. And I also have marathon training plans, and code YouTube20 gives you 20% off them.